to give them exercise, and it was a day of the walk in the village here. And the pipes, there was a whole band at that time, and they come down the village here, you see, and turn to the bottom and get up again. And they heard the pipes playing, man, as fine as you like the horse. And their lugs get for it.
So they like music?
They like it music.
Did you feel they worked better with music?
They did that. They did that. If you whistled their song to them, I think they were better.
You worked the horse yourself?
Oh, aye. I rode the horse. It was 1952, we got a tractor with a horse up that. 1952. The bear died with grass sickness, so I'd finished the horse. The song just tells it on here. If it get on, like, more or less, doesn't it?
I suppose so.
Oh, well, if you just read it to yourself, it just near tells you. I think it would have been going on, like, with the hemline in his lonely stable.
Have you ever sung that ballad yourself?
No, I don't care for it myself, you see. No.
Why is that?
And I just think it's another serious kind of song, you know, I don't care for it.
Never have, like?
No.
Is it because of the, was it attached to there, like? You think it's because of that?
I just don't care for it at all, like.
Do you think there's a lot of general feeling about folk as regards to that story?
There was when it happened, you see. There was a guy all wall at that time, I think, when
And it was your father, was he aware of it and all, like, did he?
My father?
Did he?
Oh, he kent about that song, yeah,
There's just something drags you back for really folk music originated. It really began in the country, and it's a great source to come back to far it began. Winds are sighing soft around a lonely stable loft, and through the skylight overhead the sunbeams wander round my bed. But something wi' my heart get wrong. A vessel burst and blood out sprung. My days on earth will no be long, for now's my time and I'm young.
Courage.
I think when the croft Northbridge lies, as it get past, Bonnet and held right up the Northbridge lies to Newport Slige. And I found they were taking him home. And it was written apparently, it was if ever you be.
And mother actually saw the...
That's my granny was in the same craft, you see. My granny and my mother took over the craft here, so my granny and grandma took a bigger place, you see.
It was your grandmother that saw the craft?
Aye, yes,
Can you just tell us exactly what she said?
She just saw him being taken home. We are, what did you call him at that time?
A trap, was it you said?
A
trap?
That's right, a trap, that's right, that's what he was taken home with. And he saw him taking him home, you can?
Aye.
After the, I think it was, I've heard my mother speaking about it, you can, yes, yes. It is saw him being taken home. So what he said, what?
The wards of Bindley.
Wards of Bindley, that's right. Well, my dad was born there.
It was a Bindley?
Right, I know. And a wee cottage, for the Gablice hill like it was a Bindley. That's what he saw light a day. Right, I know. I've said my master will and true, my well done work I'll never rue. That was the last verse. I've served my master well and true, my well done work I'll never rue, and what I want here best in heaven to field, to see the fairest fields of heaven. That's master well and true, my work And thought I only missed his driven outside to reach the fairest fields of home. That's the last verse.
That never did me any harm. While I was at home working on the farm, I got a turn of most jobs. Took a while as a man, and then a second cattleman, and then second horseman. In 1937, my father said to me that he wanted me, by that time he had taken Coburty, and he wanted me to go down to Coburty. I wasn't very keen because I had got involved with the junior farmers. I was secretary of the Deer Junior Farmers Club. I think I was instrumental, and I was a founder member of the Deer Junior Farmers, and thereafter I was secretary for 4 years, and then I followed that by being the chairman. And I was interested in a few things and I wasn't too keen in going down to New Aberdour. However, eventually I said that I would go down if my father would make me tenant. And an arrangement was made that I would go down as tenant. I didn't have any money, so I had to borrow. The stock of the farm was valued, and I became the tenant, and I didn't have money to pay for the stock, so I had to borrow from my father. He was good enough to give me a loan of money, and I thought, well, it'll take me 10 years at any rate to pay off the stock. I mentioned earlier that I was quite keen in maths. It was my best subject, so the last year that I was at Gordon's College, I took bookkeeping as a subject, and I was quite bright at that. I think I was about top of the class at that. So I had been keeping my father's books. I continued to do this after I went down to Coburty, and I kept books for myself. The first year I had a very small profit, I think 100 or 2. The second year I actually had a loss. And as I mentioned before, things were very bad in the 1930s. However, by 1939, when there was word of war breaking out, the Ministry of Food became the sole buyer for most of our products, and things improved. And I was able to pay back my father's loan quicker than I thought I would do. And then he said to me, well, now, he says, I want you to buy the place. I was quite happy to be renting the place, but he told me that if I didn't come to terms with him and buy the place, that he would sell it, as it was, as both the farms were mortgaged. There was he wasn't getting much of it. Eventually, I bought the farm, and
Well, my name is Gordon Easton, and I was born at Wellhead at Tyrie, far worse than just new. And I was just brought up in music and stories and all the rest of it. They were hard-working folk, but they got a lot of folk to come in about and entertain because my folk was interested in music. My mother played the fiddle, and my granny was enough a good singer, and she went out to the fishing, nae for the gutters, but she went to with the fishing till she started off at Lerwick, and they would have come down to the Broch and seen down to Yarmouth. But she catered for the coopers, the folk that made the barrels. She did up their bunks with their accommodation for them and did their cooking. But she slept with the fisher lasses after her work was done. And they did other knitting. She was a good singer herself, all the local ballads, or a lot of them. And they come for the north and for the islands and for the west coast and everything. And she had a great lot. And I got a lot of the ballads that I sing now was ballads that she used to sing. And there was another thing, the grocer for Culham down in Tyrie, we got a weekly, we get there once a week for groceries and so forth. That was about a couple of miles from here. Well, he was a fiddler, George Foley, the owner of the shop, and he used to take in pupils, just to set them going in the music. He couldn't put them a whole stage, but he set them going, and they went on to some of their teacher that was more qualified to put them up a bit further. And he was invited up, all Granda invited him up to all who's doing the close here, at least twice in the course of a winter, just to play, tell him he loved the music. And George's Foley's granddaughter come along with him, and she was a good singer. And we had some great tales, and all the neighbours, but anybody who was interested in music or singing was invited to come along. And there was a fine big old house down here, and the open peat fire, and it was just a wreck Kelly. So that was for I got the first experience of music. And Geordie Foley's fiddle had got strings, which Abdi's fiddle had at that time. That's going back a long time ago. With the heaty who's not there, not to be retuned occasionally, a tween different selection or two. And listening to Geordie tuning his fiddle, I could tune my fiddle before I could even play it, just by listening to him. There was an old fiddle putting down to the shop after I was maybe 9 years old, or thereby, to get strings on it, and well, it was a spare fiddle. My brother had in, but this was another, exactly the same. Strings not right putting on, so I got this fiddle sorted out because I was interested in the music. I was. And the day I got doing for to collect it, I had a bike at that time. I was fortunate, maybe having a bike. It doesn't matter, I had a bike, but I wasn't allowed to take a bike that day. I had to travel down for it in case I broke a fiddle in the way. So halfway home, between the Culham shop and here, I was down in the dike, down at the scare halls we got it, and to go to fiddle with the box and had an experiment with it, and I got to scale it into there is a happy land, just to start with, and it got me going, and well, for there we just progressed. And Geordie, as I said, come up twice through the winter. We are his tunes, and that was a great experience. And seeing there was another thing. There was a cattleman doing it, Captain at Tyrie, Willie Baxter. He was a bachelor, and he had a spare pound or two, I suppose, and he had a good portable gramophone. And he bought all the records, you can, the Corn Kisters and Scott Skinner and Mackenzie Murdoch and you can, all the singers, Harry Gordon, nothing. And it was just marvellous. He did the same as Geordie Foley. He was invited to an awful lot of places through the winter. And it suited Willie fine because he was buying himself doing the chamber at Captain. And he was invited into this folks' houses, and well, you had twice a day. You got there maybe about 10 o'clock, and there's a cup of tea before you get away here about midnight. And he had the comfort and the company, and he had the office selection records to be heard, just all the ballads and so forth. And but in particular he wiped it out your record when he took it out the case before he put it onto the gramophone, and wiped it again when he put it back on his sleeve, and he, when he put on a new record, he'd give you a history of what to expect. And it was just marvellous, and what a revelation it was to me, in order but it was interested in music. And seeing Jim Park up the road here, him and me, after I left the school, we decided, well, we was invited to the Fiddle to Spare Rail Society. So we biked for Tyrie to Fiddle once a week, through the winter for practicing again. And 12 mile for here to Fiddle, and that was 24 miles we biked for the round journey. But we thoroughly enjoyed it and was as enthusiastic as we get. Doesn't matter what like an act it was. Jim wrote the roads at that time, so he had a fine set of oilskins again, as you know it. And I said, oh, I can't come in there, Jim, it was enough a week then. He said, you'll come, I have a spare set of oilskins. You were kind with a cape and get out with your handlebars, your bike, and your fiddle was on your back and anything. We had been some sack taken up the road. Doesn't matter, but a pleasure we go to get to that practices. And seeing we get to concerts with the longest Spare Rail Society. There was about 30 odd members, regular every week at Fiddle Hall where we met. And it was just great. And throughout the winter even we get to those practices, there was often a good fiddler invited just as a guest, just to give some inspiration, and just to see if a good fiddler could Morgan became there. Now what a good fiddler. It was just a delight to us folk to listen and watch him. So that's as far as I can go as far as Millie. And seeing after that, well, I fiddled a lot at concerts and I'd get out to concert parties. But I never sung till, maybe 20 years ago. I just thought I thought I had a hell of a voice. It wasn't worth singing. Till a day we brought them in vegetables, as well me, we supplied the cook for 20 years with vegetables, apart from sheep and nut and corn and all the rest of it. And we were preparing the next day batch of vegetables, a night later, there was a boat needing. And we was hurricane and through the baskets that we carried in, the cabbages and the neeps and the carrots and everything, we outside the door of the shed doing the clothes, and it was dark, as you understand. And she was now up the house after us through, and she tripped over in those empty baskets and broke her ankle. So a week after that was the Keith Festival. We get on the festivals. That's the only holiday we took. And she couldn't go because she couldn't walk, as you understand. So I was myself, I get up, well, I was just myself in the car getting up to Keith, and I sung all the way up. And I said, look, my folks know we's a day, I'll have a go. So I entered 3 competitions, I think, that day up at Keith, just mowing. The Mouthy and the Diddling and the Boothie Ballad. And I won 3 prizes. I was second for the Boothie Ballad. So that was the start of my competition work. And for there it's just mushroomed a bit. And, well, you came with a good load. And we just had the Buchan Heritage Festival last weekend here at Slicken, which was marvellous. Meeting our folk far and near, just your musical friends and other friends were by. And we used to bank to the competitions up here years ago. Well, that was with Jam and Malay Donald Feders that day at that time. And we get up to Elgin to the competitions there, and we just loved them again and entered and had some success. Files near muckle, but we didn't bother with that, we just enjoyed it. And the same time that we get up to Elgin, we get a week overseas, it was a full in weeks. We just made a holiday of it, and we get back next week to the competitions at Elgin. And that's how that I can tell you, and it's still going on yet. I was doing it a fortnight ago at the East Fife Song Association there, and as a guest. and it was just marvellous. There was a lady from North America, there was from Ireland, and there was another person from Cornwall and one from Newcastle. And it's just great meeting all the different types of singing and so forth. So that's